Hello history buffs, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most pivotal moments in Roman history, the final, earth-shattering clash between two titans, Julius Caesar and Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, or Pompey the Great. This isn't just a story of a single battle. It's the story of the day the Roman Republic drew its last breath. So, grab your seat, because we're heading back to 48 BC for the showdown at Pharsalus. Our story begins not with victory, but with a stinging defeat for Caesar. At the Battle of Dyrrhachium, his legendary luck seemed to have run out. His army was battered, his lines were broken, and he was forced into a humiliating retreat. For the first time in a long while, the great Caesar had been outmaneuvered and soundly beaten by his old rival Pompey. This wasn't just a tactical loss, it was a devastating blow to the morale of his legions. They were hungry, exhausted, and a sense of despair was creeping into the ranks. Imagine the scene: Caesar, standing before his weary soldiers, the sting of defeat still fresh. His army was a shadow of its former self. Food was scarce, supplies were dwindling, and the sick and wounded numbered in the thousands. The future of his entire campaign, and indeed his life, hung by a thread. He was cornered in Greece, deep in enemy territory, with Pompey's superior navy controlling the seas. A return to Italy seemed impossible. It was in this moment of crisis that Caesar's true genius for leadership had to shine. He needed a plan, and he needed one fast. Caesar gathered his officers. The options were grim. Some suggested a desperate high-risk march overland, through hostile territories, all the way back to Italy. It was a journey fraught with danger, ambush, and the near certainty of starvation. The very thought was a testament to their desperation. But Caesar, ever the pragmatist, knew this was a fool's errand. It would be a death march, not a strategic retreat. He needed to consolidate, resupply, and face his enemy on his own terms. His gaze turned eastward, towards the fertile plains of Thessaly. He made his decision. The army would march inland. Their first objective was to regroup with a detached force commanded by his loyal general Gnaeus Domitius Calvinus. First, they moved to Apollonia to leave their wounded, and then pushed on towards Thessaly. The march was brutal. The soldiers were on the brink of collapse, but Caesar's presence, his unwavering resolve, kept them moving. He marched with them, shared their hardships, and reminded them of their past glories. He was rebuilding their confidence one step at a time. Their first major stop was the city of Gomphit. It had initially pledged loyalty to Caesar, but news of his defeat at Dyrrhachium had traveled fast. Emboldened by Pompey's victory, the city leaders slammed their gates shut, refusing entry to Caesar's beleaguered army. This was a critical test. To allow this defiance to stand would invite others to do the same. Caesar couldn't afford a lengthy siege. His men needed food now. So, he did what he did best. He acted with lightning speed and ruthless efficiency. He addressed his men, his voice ringing with purpose. He painted a picture of the riches within the city: walls, food, wine, and plunder. He transformed their desperation into a thirst for victory. The assault was swift and brutal. Within a few hours, the walls were breached, and Gomphit fell. The city was given over to the soldiers, who, after weeks of starvation, feasted and drank. It was a harsh but necessary act. More than just feeding his army, the fall of Gomphit sent a powerful message to the rest of Thessaly. Defiance of Caesar comes at a steep price. Soon after, the city of Metropolis saw the writing on the wall and surrendered without a fight, opening its gates and providing much-needed supplies. Meanwhile, what of Pompey? After his stunning victory at Dyrrhachium, he was riding a wave of confidence. The senatorial faction in his camp was ecstatic. They saw Caesar as a beaten man. On the run, men like Cato Scipio and other powerful aristocrats were already arguing over who would get Caesar's title of Pontifex Maximus. They were dividing the spoils of a war they hadn't even won yet. They urged Pompey, almost demanded, that he hunt Caesar down and finish him off immediately. But Pompey was a cautious and experienced general. He knew Caesar. He knew that a cornered wolf was the most dangerous. His strategy had been to starve Caesar out, to use his superior numbers and control of the sea to win a war of attrition without risking a pitched battle. He understood that facing Caesar's veteran legions in a direct confrontation was an enormous gamble. Regardless of his own numerical advantage, he preferred to wait, to let hunger and disease do the work for him. However, the pressure from his senatorial allies was immense. They were not professional soldiers. They were politicians, impatient for glory, and eager to return to their comfortable lives in Rome. They accused Pompey of dragging out the war, of enjoying his supreme command a little too much. They mocked his caution, calling him Agamemnon, king of kings, because of the crowd of lesser kings and senators who followed his every move. This constant political pressure began to wear Pompey down. His judgment, once so clear, was being clouded by the egos and ambitions of the men around him. Following Caesar into the plains of Thessaly, Pompey finally caught up with him near the town of Pharsalus. Here, he chose his ground carefully, setting up his camp on a hill, in a strong defensive position. From this vantage point, he could look down on Caesar's camp on the plain below. He had the high ground, a larger army, and a massive advantage in cavalry. All the tactical manuals of the day would say his position was nearly unassailable. He intended to wait. Caesar, however, could not afford to wait. His supplies were still limited, and the longer he sat idle, the more his situation would worsen. He needed to force a battle. Every day, he would march his legions out onto the plain, forming them up in battle array, directly challenging Pompey to come down and fight. He was trying to bait his opponent, to play on the impatience of the senators in Pompey's camp. He moved his own camp closer and closer to Pompey's hill, tightening the psychological pressure. For several days, this tense standoff continued. Pompey held firm, refusing to take the bait. Caesar's men, their morale now restored, were eager for a fight. They were tired of running, tired of being hungry. They wanted to settle this, once and for all. Caesar, seeing Pompey's reluctance, even considered abandoning the confrontation and marching away, hoping to draw Pompey into a pursuit where he might be more vulnerable. But then, on the morning of August 9th, 48 BC, something changed. As Caesar's army was preparing to break camp and march on, he saw it. The standards of Pompey's legions were moving. They were descending from the hill. The senators had finally won the argument. Pompey, against his better military judgment, had caved to the pressure. He had decided to offer battle. For Caesar, this was the moment he had been waiting for. He reportedly turned to his men and said, "We have been wanting this for a long time, and now the opportunity is here. We must fight." The stage was now set. On the plains of Pharsalus, the fate of Rome would be decided. On one side, Pompey the Great, with an army that outnumbered his opponents by at least 2-1, backed by the authority of the Senate. On the other, Julius Caesar, the gambler, with his hardened, fiercely loyal legions, ready to risk everything on a single throw of the dice. This wasn't just a battle for control of Rome. It was a battle between two different futures for the Roman world. And what happened next would change the course of history forever. The events of the Battle of Pharsalus are a masterclass in tactics and leadership, and we'll be breaking down that incredible story in our next video. You won't want to miss it. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through one of history's greatest rivalries. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next episode. We'll see you then.